Hi, everyone. So happy you're here. Hope you're having a good day. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz. I am an executive leadership coach, and I am here to introduce myself. Allow me to introduce myself. Before I start going, I would love to know who you are. So if you're joining me and you're in the chat, just say hi, tell me who you are. If I haven't met you before, let me know how your day's going. Give me a piece of good news. Tell me what you had for breakfast. Whatever. I'm just here for the conversation. I am streaming through live stream or through Restream. And so I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube today. And sometimes the comments don't come through great. So I'm keeping an eye on my phone until I see that comments are actually coming through. And if you haven't given permission to Restream to use your name, you may come through here with a comment as LinkedIn user or Facebook user. So I'll still call you out. I'll still say hi. I love for this to be a conversation. I love to be in a conversation with you and answering questions, bringing things up as they come up. Go ahead and heckle me, but like in a kind way. But let me know if you're here. Let me know if you are. Oh, good. We've got some comments coming in. That always makes me feel better. My anxiety over the comment section is coming down. Hello from L2 and Biscuit. Oh man, if you haven't seen L2's puppy, go see her puppy on her page. So cute. So cute. And we've got Jolivia, available senior HR level professional. Weird day so far. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that's a weird day. I'm sorry to hear you're available, or excited to hear that you're available. I'm not sure. Y'all, Julie's awesome. Get to know her. And we've got a happy Monday from Nancy. Way to have a new take on Mondays. Love that. Nora's joining us also. Ho, hooray. Glad to be able to finally tune into one of your live streams. Thanks, Nora. I'm glad you're here. I realized I was always live streaming at night, which was just sort of what happened. And last week I went live with Tanya Bugbee in the middle of the day, and it was like a whole new crew of people. So I've decided now I'm going to switch it up sometimes and do some days and some evenings. But I'm so glad you're here. And as we continue to go along, if you've got questions, if you have comments, just keep the conversation going. Interrupt me. I want to hi from April also. Hey. Y'all, I met April this weekend, like in person. She's a human, just like the rest of us. We had a happy hour in Alexandria, Virginia. April and Andy Barber and I are all in the DC area. And so we had a pajama party and rented an Airbnb and invited some folks from the DC area. And Alka Howard joined us and Jessica Burris joined us. And it was totally fun. And we're going to do it again. And we're going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So you'll have to join us. Julie's got an explanation of her weird day. 3 different search companies approached me on the exact same job for a company that typically ignores my resume. I don't know who to trust. So I trust no one. That sounds fair. Yeah. Julie, see if anybody's connected to anybody you know, and maybe you could ask some questions. But, the job market's pretty weird right now. So cool. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been on LinkedIn for a couple of years now, and I've been active for a couple of years. So I sort of like imagine that I've known people for a while. I've known all of you. Like, I feel like if I ran into you in the grocery store and recognized you from your profile picture, we'd be talking like we were neighbors all this time. And so I forget that, like, I have a story, you have a story. I love backstories, and not everyone knows mine. So a little bit about like the very short career version of me. Graduated from college in the late 1900s. And I had a psychology degree, and I only knew I didn't want to go home. I didn't know what I wanted to do as a grown-up for a living. And so I got a job. That job happened to be an assistant job at a nonprofit, a trade association, plastics. If you remember the commercials from the 80s and 90s, plastics make it possible. That was not our organization. It was the other organization that was a more successful plastics organization. That was my job. I was a staff assistant to a meetings department. I worked with machinery and mold makers. I got to edit standards because I was good at grammar. And I got to travel to places like Detroit. So not a super exciting. Sorry if you're from Detroit. I went to the convention center and the spaghetti factory and otherwise basically stayed in the hotel and convention center. But that was my first job. And that was sort of my intro into grown-up work. And I knew I didn't want to do it for a long time. And I knew I didn't want to do it forever. And my introduction to the work world was like liquid lunches too, which I know is normal in some companies and super unusual in other companies. And the next company I worked for was a rental car company where you did not drink during lunch because of the driving factor. So after a year, hey, Tim, thanks for joining us. So after a year, I got another job. Like, still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And figured I'll get into a big company and move around. That seemed to be a thing that people did. So I moved to Enterprise Rent-A-Car as an accountant, which is funny because I can barely count all 11 of my fingers. Not sure how many I have. So being then in accounting, and it was entry level accounting, I couldn't have taken down the company or anything. Hey, we've got Stephen Doyle with us. Nice to see you. I couldn't have taken down the company with any accounting errors, but like that wasn't my forte. But I did that for a little while, and then I got tapped on the shoulder, just as I imagined I would. Big company, got tapped on the shoulder. Of course, I'll move into this other department. And so, hey, Lee, thanks for joining. So I move into this other department, which is sales. It's business to business fleet sales. And so I am working with companies to build them trucks and vans. Seems like a great gig, right? And I came into that job right at the time when a bunch of companies were turning their vehicles over. They'd kept them for 2 years or 3 years or however long the leases were. And then they let them go. And so I came in at a really lucky time because I worked on partial commission, and then that dried up and I didn't know how to sell. Nobody had taught me how to sell. I just was supposed to go to these companies who already had our vehicles, get them to get more vehicles, get them on our insurance, get them on our gas cards. And I didn't believe in it. And I didn't believe I could sell. And I was right, because whatever you believe, like, there you go, you're correct about it. And so I was flailing in that job and convincing myself I had to stay in the job for a year, because that's what you do. When you're an entry-level employee, you have to stay places at least a year. It's a lie I was telling myself. And then I got tapped on the shoulder again to move into human resources. And I said, I'm going to stay here. I really want to make this work. And the person who tapped me on the shoulder, who was the general manager of the region at the time, who was an amazing man, said to me, Lauren, you don't have to succeed in this. You can go succeed somewhere else. And that was a great piece of advice, that to be in something that wasn't working for me, that I wasn't succeeding at, that I also wasn't enjoying. Like, why was I pushing that so hard? And so I moved into human resources, and that stuck for 20 years. And at first it was like a lot of fun. And Enterprise had a very sort of, I don't know if they still do, but they had a very sort of hard line for HR, that you were no longer allowed to be friends with employees. You had a responsibility to the company. You were there to protect employees, to protect the company, but not to be friends with employees. And so that was a surprise for me in my work world, that I later found balance in how friendly I could be with employees. And in a lot of cases, when I left a company or when somebody else left a company, there was a conversation of like, oh, good, we can be friends now, without that sort of HR barrier. So I started this HR career, and I love it. And and I'm volunteering for things. I got involved in an OFCCP audit, which if you've got OFCCP in your company, federal contracts in your company in the US, you know what that means if you're having an OFCCP audit. And so that was actually like pretty exciting to get to prepare all of the files and help with that audit. And then the company was opening a new region, and they were taking the DC area had 4 regions, and they were taking people from each of them and putting them in a 5th region that was concentrated in downtown DC. And I was selected to lead the HR function in this new region, creating this new culture, big opportunity. And what I learned pretty quickly was the expectation when you were in a leadership position was that you showed up on Saturdays, like 1 or 2 Saturdays a month, preferably 2, but like if you really want to get noticed, 3. First in, last out is, that gets counted, that gets looked at. And this is a while ago, this is, 20 plus years ago, but that knowledge, that learning put me in a place where, as a person who is competitive with myself, not really with others, and as a person who likes to please, and as a person who likes to prove myself as good at things, I just jumped at that. I was 2 to 3 weekends a month. I was in earliest. I stayed latest. The challenge of that was that I didn't actually have enough work to be working 60 hours a week. So I volunteered for things. So I took things that were, area wide, and I took leadership on those. I became the person who trained all of the other HR people. When they came into the job, they were sent to me. I would onboard them. I helped with audits in other departments. And I really loved it. I loved the leadership. I loved the recognition. I loved knowing that I was proving myself, that I was pleasing people. And I hit a point where it was time for me to leave because my boss didn't like me. And with that company, with that region, the way that it was set up, he had the say as to whether I got promoted or not. So it eventually hit this point where I'm working 50, 60 hours a week. I'm training people who are coming in a level above me, and I'm not going to get promoted unless somebody forces this guy to promote me. And when I raised my concerns about that, I was moved to another office where I was told I was going to be given the opportunity to work with this amazing guy who would be my boss, and he'd look at me for promotion in a short period of time. And then they fired him 4 days later and told me that they needed someone to hold down the fort. So the proof in my mind was I'm really good at things. And I'm the person who covers all the things. And I didn't really want to do that at that place anymore. So I found a new job, and I walked into this job with the opportunity to work barely a 40-hour work week, cush job, right? Investment company, so good to their employees, really good cause, really great mission. They still have a great mission. They've been bought out a couple of times. And so they're now a group of funds inside of, I think, Morgan Stanley. But awesome company, just such a great place to work. And 40 hours wasn't enough for me because I had gotten used to taking on all the other things. I had gotten used to the hand raising. That was what I knew to do. That was how I knew to stand out. And it wasn't satisfactory for me to just do a job. There was nobody telling me this. There was nobody telling me that it was my job to do more than my job. I was the only one telling me that. And I'm saying that over and over because I have met so many people over the years who realize that while I'm talking to them, oh, nobody's really asking me to do this work either. I'm the one going above and beyond. I'm the one deciding. And then you get into this pattern where you keep deciding to do more. So then you become the go-to person for doing more because you can be counted on to do more. So it's like this, spiral that you get into. So anyway, so here I am at this new job. I'm given my responsibilities, and it's easy peasy 40 hours a week. And I said to my manager, what's our relationship with the parent company? We were owned by an insurance company. And the answer I got was like, oh, we're pretty separate. They don't really bother us. We don't really bother them. We have their benefits and those kinds of things, but we're otherwise pretty separate. So I said, cool, can I build a relationship with them? So I got permission to do that. And then social media became popular, and our company had to figure out, because they were SEC regulated, what do you do about social media? So I volunteered to be on the social media committee for regulations and permissions and all of that kind of stuff. And then because I had built a relationship with the parent company, I was given the opportunity to be in training that was delivered to the whole company, in policy development for the whole company, in different projects, implementing a new HRIS system. Really cool. Well, now I was working 70 hours a week. And then we had this period of time where we were growing, and I was like squeezing 70 hours a week in, because that was all the time I could muster. Because during that time, I was living with chronic illness. So now not only am I like a 70-hour-a-week workaholic, I am also ill all the time. It started as I was getting ready to leave Enterprise with a grand mal seizure that happened out of nowhere. And thank goodness I've never had one again. And many years later, I went to the Mayo Clinic, and they theorized that I had a virus that attacked my brain. I had a seizure, and then my brain's response was to create an autoimmune attack. And all of my systems, my muscular system, my dermatology system, my respiratory system, my endocrine system, all got crazy out of whack. And to this day, I still take 23 pills a day to manage all of that, but it's managed well. So in the midst of me dealing with, I don't know what's wrong with me, and doing 2 Avon walks for breast cancer, because my brain was like, you're not doing enough exercising. So you have to exercise more to fight whatever this thing is. So as I'm building a chronic illness, building a marathon endurance that I didn't actually have, and working 70 hours a week, I'm thinking the work world is hard and exhausting, and nobody has created this but me. Other people helped me create it. And Nora says the problem, you're not getting paid to do more, though, most of the time. So true. And you feel like you're listening to your own story. Well, welcome to our lives, Nora. So time goes on. I'm working 70 hours a week. I'm trying to figure out why I'm so sick. I'm seeing doctors all the time. And so I'm basically working and sleeping and working and sleeping, right? Lather, rinse, repeat. That was my life in that sort of decade. And what I later realized was, wherever I went, I took me with me, right? And I stayed at companies for a long time. And so once I built this presentation of this is who I am, I volunteer for things, call on me for anything, I'll be happy to help, I'll cross departmental work, I'll cross company work, whatever you need, I'm here for it. So I had created this me, and I was perpetuating this version of me. And it worked for a while, because it distracted me from being sick. It made me feel like I was really contributing. I saw that I was making an impact and making a difference. And if I didn't have the energy for my regular life, like, at least I could put it into work and like really get some stuff done and really have like an impact somewhere. So after almost a decade there, they decided that they were going to sell. I didn't know this yet, but I heard rumors. And when you're in HR and you hear rumors and you're not in the conversation, you're in the group of people who are going to eventually be let go. So I started looking for something else. And I found a job as the first HR vice president for a nonprofit, the first ever in their 25-year history. And I was so stoked, because I was going to get to create from scratch an entire HR function for a company that had never had HR. So I made a promise to myself that I would go into this company, I would work long hours for the first 6 months to get stuff set up. I would make sure they were up and running, get myself down to 40 hours a week, and leave. 1 year. I was giving that company 1 year. And it was like a reset for me. But I had no plan. And a goal without a plan is just a wish. So I went to this new company with this wish. I went from 70 hours a week to 80 to 100 hours a week to set this company up for success. And when I came into the company, someone called me Mary Poppins and said, like, oh, you're finally here. Make magic, give us policies. We don't understand how anything works here. There's nobody to go to. We're so glad you're here. Which is unusual for HR. So it like made my heart really warm. And hey, Phil, thanks for joining us. Made my heart really warm to know that not only was I going to get to create something from scratch, but also like I was appreciated. And at this point in time, I'm back from the Mayo Clinic. I've been in physical therapy for like about 2 years to rebuild my muscular system. And I'm feeling like, okay, for the first time in my adult life, I'm feeling like I've got the chronic illness stuff under control. I'm going to build this place so I can work 40 hours a week, take it easy, and then like go find an even easier job with this. Like I know how to build HR departments under my belt. And so after a year where I was working 80 to 100 hours a week pretty consistently, and anytime there was a dip or there was a leader who left, I became the interim leader of that department. So if you need an interim marketing, fundraising, programs, finance, I've done it all. I've managed every department in a nonprofit at one time or another. And also because of my go-getterness and my agreeability, when I first came in, they said, the meetings department, which ran one really big meeting a year and several small meetings throughout the year, they've never really had a leader. They've reported to the CEO, but that's not quite the right place. And we don't really know where to put them. And maybe you could take them on. So now I was the vice president of HR and meetings and conferences. And later, and then quickly, actually, I took on operations. So IT, different administrative functions around the office, our receptionist, our operations director. So now I had a couple of teams reporting to me, and I'm growing my own function, and I'm almost always interim managing another team. And I realized at that point that I was no longer happy, that this life wasn't going to work for me long term. 80 to 100 hours a week of working wasn't going to work for me long term. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And so at the end of 2018, I started taking on more clients on the side in my spare time. And I had always been coaching and resume writing and cover letter writing. And, that sort of led to like, I don't even know what job I want. And that led to some training and some coaching. And so I always had these side gigs coaching, and I always loved them best, but I didn't make quite enough time for them. I made just enough time to really serve people and to serve them well. And I didn't know how to do any of that for myself. And the big secret is you're not supposed to do everything by yourself. You're supposed to use other people to help you. That was a big lesson that I hadn't quite learned yet. And so now I'm, it's 2018, and I'm like, I'm going to get it together. I'm going to change my life. This is not the long-term plan for me. I thought I was going to work 80 to 100 hours for a year or for 6 months, maybe a year, and then get out of that company and go do something else. And now I've been here, 3 years. And how did that even happen? So I start looking for other jobs, and all the other jobs felt the same to me because my mindset was, I'm a workaholic. Wherever I go, I'm going to tell you I'm a workaholic. I'm going to tell you how hard I work. I'm going to tell you I don't mind putting in extra hours. And any interviewer is going to be like, that's awesome. She works really hard. She's going to put in as many hours as we can take. So I didn't leave because I thought, well, if I'm going to go to another company, I'm going to be like starting all over. I'm going to have to prove myself. I'm not going to be able to take time off for a while. Again, all of this was in my head. No company was telling me that. And I never told an employee that when they joined a company I worked for. We make it up. We make up that we're going to have limitations if we find a new job, if we set boundaries at work, any of that kind of stuff. And it's not unfounded, right? Like we've proven it to ourselves. We've proven to ourselves that if we work really hard and really long, that we will be rewarded with being known as a person who gets things done and makes an impact. So end of 2018, that winter break time, our office closed and I did a full clean out of my condo. I organized my underwear by color. I took out clothes that I hadn't worn in years and donated them. I threw out a bunch of stuff I didn't need anymore. In the beginning of 2019, it was almost perfect. Everything was almost perfect. Like I cleaned the freaking baseboards by hand, right? I was like determined to get everything perfect and organized so that I could look for a new job with a clear head and find that like perfect new job. And I'm wrapping up all my projects. I was at a point where I actually wasn't interim managing another department. I had finished interim managing a department and was in between. And we were working from home one day before we all worked from home all the time. And so this was early 2019. And there was a retirement plan, new retirement plan that we were launching. So I'm planning that meeting. I'm sitting working on my laptop and I'm running my Roomba vacuum as the last thing. Oh, hey, Sabrina. You've heard this story. I'm running my Roomba vacuum as like the last thing to make everything exactly perfect. I had that to do, and I had a glass lamp on a table by the door that was waiting to be donated. And the Roomba vacuum, everybody knows those robot vacuums that go on their own, was heading towards a glass lamp that was unplugged. That glass lamp that I just needed to donate, that one last thing that I just needed to do before I was going to change my whole life, again, without a plan. So it wasn't really a goal, a goal without a plan is a wish. It was not really a plan. It was just sort of a wish that I was going to change everything after I finished vacuuming. And the Roomba starts going for the lamp cord, and I picture the lamp shattering on the ground, and I jump up off the couch where I'm doing my work, run across the room to catch the Roomba, slip on my wood floor in my socks, launch forward ungracefully. Grace is not my best skill. And I reach out my arms in front of me to try to catch the dining room table that I'm heading towards. I'm not close enough to it. And so I land on the floor face first, slam down, arms overhead, and both of my shoulders break. Just when everything was going to be perfect. And that is a whole story that I can tell in more detail on another live. But the very short story of that is I was out of work for 4 months. I was living in rehab centers. When you break your shoulders, if you want to play a little game right now, try to just move your elbows and hands. And thank goodness my wrists, elbows, and hands did not break. But you cannot reach your face. You can't, even if you bend down, reach your face. You cannot put your own pants on. You cannot go to the bathroom by yourself. And so I was living in rehab centers with people much, much older than me. And oh, Lauren, I'm sorry. Did I mention that hearing about how other people injured themselves makes me hyperventilate? You chose me and you chose to be here. So my baseline recovery was about 4 months before I was like really back working. And it was about 5 months before I was back at the office. And during that time, the very first thing that came up was, oh, I guess you can't be a hand raiser anymore. Right. And that joke came from more than one person because I was known as the chronic hand raiser. I was known as the person who would do anything for anyone, whatever you needed. If there was silence in the room when somebody said, who's going to take care of this? My hand went up. I'll do it. So now I literally couldn't be a hand raiser. And the next thing that came up was the nickname T-Rex arms because I could only use the bottom half of my arms. And so I had this 4 or 5 month period to think. And I say that like almost flippantly because like who's thinking, right? Like I'm thinking about trying to feed myself. I'm not really thinking about like what does my corporate future look like. So I promised myself, again, another wish, that going back to work, I would set boundaries and I wouldn't work crazy hours anymore. And I wouldn't take on any interim departments. And I was just going to have like a balanced life for a while. And when I felt like it again, I would look for a job. Well, with no plan, I didn't do that. I went right back. As soon as I could, I was working 80 hours again. And our head of finance left. And so I was the interim manager of finance. And our director of operations left. So I was managing our office, our new office renovation and eventual move, and doing my job as HR. And I was right back to that grind. And I was really mad at myself because I thought like I had all of this time just like sitting around, right? And I laugh at myself now when I say that, like I was just sitting around, because I was busy healing, right? But you think it's like so much time that you would have time to evaluate and plan and coach yourself or get coached. And I didn't. I just went back to work. And then the pandemic started. So now we're at 2020. We're another year into me not wanting to be at this job anymore and not even really liking HR anymore. I think part of the reason I took on all these other departments was because I just didn't like HR anymore. I had been in it for a long time. I enjoyed it for a long time. And then I just didn't. And I didn't know what else I wanted to do. So the pandemic begins. And if you're in HR, you know that we were in charge of the pandemic. I guess it's a people issue, but for whatever reason, everything came through attorneys, and attorneys went to HR, and we became the go-to experts for the pandemic. And so the first question that came to me was, what do we do? What are you hearing? And so I would report what I was hearing about, oh, this virus is getting bigger and some companies are starting to send people home, right? And then it came down to a head of like, the governor's going to close the state. What do we do? And when I got that, what do we do question, my internal response was, I don't effing know, and stop asking me questions. Because I was so tired. I was so burnt out. I was so tired of being the person who had to know everything. And like, it was my first pandemic too. And the team I was working with was really collaborative. So this wasn't a reflection on the team. This boss I had was like the best boss I've ever had in my career. So this wasn't a reflection on the team. It was a reflection on, I hit the wall. I was so tired. I couldn't do any more things. So we made this decision to go home, and we were really well set up for being on Zoom and all of these things. And we hadn't really utilized it before, but everybody adapted really quickly. And I joined an online HR group. And I think if I hadn't found an online group, I don't think I would have made all the moves I've made since then. But I joined this online group of women who are in HR, and a couple of them had gotten coaching certifications and become full-time coaches. And it had never occurred to me that that was something that I could do, even though I'd been coaching for years and years and years. And somehow in my mind, I was like, oh, coaches make like $30,000 a year. It's not true. I mean, it is for some coaches, but that's not how executive coaching typically works. And so I started getting curious, and I called an acquaintance who I had worked with at another company who had become a coach, to just sort of find out the logistics, right? And in typical like good worker fashion, I had my notebook, I had my pen. Tell me how it works. What are the logistics? How much does it cost? How many hours is it? How do you do it? Do you actually need the certification? What if I've been coaching for 20 years, right? So I'm going through my checklist, and I said to this coach, my challenge is going to be that I already work 80 to 100 hours a week, and I don't know how I'm going to fit this in on top of that. And my work schedule is not flexible. It cannot change. And she said, if you say so, which made me really mad at the time, because I thought, well, you don't understand. You don't work in the corporate life. You don't know how it is. You don't know what my life is like, right? And in that moment, I realized I was creating this all for myself. It was this one moment where I thought, oh, okay. if something's going to change, I have to change some things. It's not just going to like happen to me. I'm not going to just wake up one morning and be working 40 hours a week and have all of this like open decision for myself if I'm not taking control. So I hired her as my coach during that conversation. And she helped me over a period of time get from 80 to 100 hours a week to 40 hours a week doing only my job. And I still say only, which is like not unreasonable, right? It is a reasonable thing to do the job you were hired to do. That's what I was hired to do. That's the job description. And so I made this conscious decision to go towards doing what my job was, doing it well, but doing what my job was. And it took several months. It is not a fast thing to untangle a workaholic life, a people pleaser life, a perfectionist life. It's not fast and it's not easy. And it is so worth it. And it started with like 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there and saying no to this and pausing before I said yes and literally sitting on my hands to not raise them when something came up. And then eventually having a conversation with my boss where I said, I've been cutting down my hours and I need to cut them down even more. And I need your help in making sure that I stay in my lane. So not only did I learn to take control of my career, I also learned to ask for help, which is not easy for an independent person. We have this theory in our heads as high achievers that if people come to us for stuff, we're supposed to know everything. And if we don't know the answer to something, it must not be able to be done. There's like a little bit of ego in that, but there's actually more uncertainty in that. Because what we're actually questioning is, if I can't figure out how to change it, I must not be smart enough to change it. And I don't want anybody to know I'm not smart. So I'll just sit here quietly doing my work and just keep working hard. And that was a hard pill to swallow for me. But I did. I took the help from my coach. I realized how helpful help is, and I reached out for more. And what I discovered as I was heading from 80 to 40 hours a week was I didn't know how to spend my time. There were many times where I was like, I'm just going to take back work because I don't know what to do with my time. B, I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I knew I wanted to be an executive coach full time. I knew that I wanted to believe in other people's capacity for growth and change and going after the life that they dreamed of and the life that they actually wanted. That's my purpose. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I also knew that I was going to have limitations on how far I could help people take themselves if I wasn't willing to take myself anywhere. That was a big wake-up call for me. And I recognized that if I didn't allow myself to be coached and I didn't allow myself to dream of a different future, that 10 years from now, I would still be working 80 to 100 hours a week in another company, maybe doing HR, maybe doing something else. But my corporate life was going to be a workaholic life if I didn't change something. So in that next couple of years, I took control. I figured out what I needed to do logistically to get certified for my street cred. I took a different kind of coaching certification than some of the more mainstream ones. I got trained in ontological coaching, which is more about somatics. It's the body and also our way of being, not just our way of thinking and not just our way of doing. And so that was a little bit off the track of the more facilitative training that I had being a coach. So it really opened me up to new ways of thinking. And in January of 2021, I decided this is what I want to do. And I found myself a business strategist, Katie McManus, who's amazing. I had a phone conversation with her where we talked about my 5-year goal. That was clearly always going to be a 5-year goal if I didn't really, work too hard at it, to get out of corporate and have a coaching practice. And she said, well, why so long? And I started rattling off money and benefits and I don't know, reasons. And we talked about it. She answered a bunch of questions. She asked me how much benefits would cost on the exchange market. Of course, I'd already researched that because I was really good at, researching and taking notes. So I told her, and she said, great, decide what you want to make, add that amount, and that's what you need to make. And it was like, I can basically do anything. So I started working with Katie, and we had landed on a year that from January to December, I would work to get everything in order, work to get my business going. And in December, I would give my notice so that in 2022, I would have my own business. Katie is so good. And I was so ready, so much more ready than I realized. And I was so much more ready than I was letting myself be because I was scared. And so I wanted to hold back. And in 3 months, I gave my notice because I had clients coming in. I had money saved from the pandemic, and I just freaking wanted it. It was the first time in such a long time that I really wanted this new life, that I could see a future that wasn't just me working a billion hours a week and serving others and pleasing and coming home exhausted and sick, that I couldn't not go after it. So I gave my notice after 3 months. And I gave, this is my last people pleasing action in the corporate world. We were required, and I use required lightly because the US is mostly at will, and I could have left that day if I wanted, but our handbook suggested a month's notice if you were director or above. Well, I was director and above and an overachiever, so I gave 2 months notice. And my boss was worried because we had a new CEO at this time. He was worried about me leaving and him onboarding. So he asked me to stay an extra month. So I ended up with 3 months notice. I don't recommend that. It wasn't the worst 3 months of my life, but I was like, I want to start my new life now. And I also had the opportunity to coach some employees from the organization when I left, when we had that separation. So that was actually like a really nice way to leave. And so now I've been in business full-time on my own for a little over a year. I've had a variety of coaches. Katie McManus has been my steadfast, continuous coach, but I have worked with coaches to figure out a whole bunch of stuff. I have gone to therapy a couple of times in this time period because change is hard, and confronting your past is hard, and deciding who you want to be next is hard. And what I have really learned is that following your dreams is really important. I imagined myself at 65, at 75, at 85, looking back and thinking like, man, I'm exhausted. All I did was work. And I didn't want that for myself anymore. I'm in my mid-40s now, and I didn't want to live any more life through work alone. And I had to figure out like what my hobbies were, right? So that was figuring that out. And B was figuring out that I deserve joy. Just for being human, just for being a person, I deserve to be happy. And so do you. And C, that I can pretty much do anything I want. I probably can't be a mountain climber. Like, I'm not great with sports of any kind. Still got some of those chronic illness issues. Don't really like being up high. So like, I'll set some limitations on myself about what I can be. It's probably too late for me to be an astronaut. But in the scope of what I know, in the scope of what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing, I can do whatever I want. And knowing that not only logically, but actually believing it, because I have worked with different coaches who helped me with different aspects of my relationship with myself, my relationship to work, my aspirations, my more therapeutic issues. I've worked with people to help me explore those. And so my big lesson is that we are not in this alone. And that's what I talk to my clients about all the time is you don't have to figure this out by yourself. You don't have to come to our calls with your plan all planned out and your goals all handled. That's what we're here together for, is to recognize What isn't going well? What do you not want anymore in your life? Let's dig through that. Let's figure out who you are, right? We get to an age and we forget that we can still explore who we are and who we want to be. And then let's figure out what you want and how to get there. And that's something that you need help with. If you are an individual person, if you're a high achiever who's just used to doing things on your own, it is very hard to say to yourself, okay, now go accept help. But you can. And I have, and my clients have, and many high achievers who I know have. And once you cross that threshold where you recognize the value of getting support, you will not want to go without support ever again. So I have a tool for you. It's a fine as a trap inventory. You know, my slogan is fine as a trap. And now you know why. I was trapped in this fine cycle for years and years and years. I probably wouldn't have complained about my life, except that like maybe I worked too hard, but it was fine, right? I said it was fine. I felt like it was fine. And what I realized is fine isn't enough, right? So I have an inventory for you at fineasatrap.com. Don't put the www in. I don't know why, but it works better without it. Sometimes it doesn't open if you have the www. But the inventory gives you an opportunity to look at your career and your work life and figure out what's going well, what's not going well. And then you can start having the conversation with yourself, with me, with a mentor, with a colleague, about what you actually want and figure out who you want to be when you grow up. So now, today, here, I am a coach. I'm a full-time coach. I work fewer than 40 hours a week. I have a podcast with my friend and co-coach, John Spears. It's called I Could Talk to You All Day. Actually, we have an episode coming out tomorrow about quiet quitting, which is a term that is driving me absolutely up a wall. Because it's, if you've heard the definition of quiet quitting, it's in one case equivalent to active disengagement, which is like just, collecting the paycheck. But it's also being talked about as just doing your job, which drives me crazy because you should be allowed to do your job and not work insane hours and not go to all this crazy above and beyond that we've been doing for so many years. So that's coming out tomorrow, but we've got some episodes before that I think you'll really enjoy. We just talk about what it's like to be a leader, just like real talk, real people. And the other thing, which is hard to, there we go, which is, I'll put the link in the comments. The other thing that I run, besides the one-on-one coaching, is Procrastinators Power Hour. And what that is a virtual co-working space for procrastinators. It's actually really for high achievers because we are the best procrastinators. We are so good at justifying why we're not doing something high achieving because we're over here doing something else high achieving. So Procrastinators Power Hour happens twice a week, 3:00 on Tuesdays Eastern and 11:00 on Thursdays Eastern. And it's a club, it's a membership. You come, you join, we spend an hour co-working quietly. We start with setting intentions. We end with celebrating what we've done well, and really just being there to support each other in a focused way so that we can get to the projects that we put off because they're for ourselves. They're things we hate. They're things we know we should be doing and we kind of want to do. Thanks, L2. Power Hour is the best hour of my week. Yes, Lauren is a member of Procrastinators Power Hour. We all get so much done because we're accountable to each other and we're in community with each other. And it's freaking awesome. So if you are hearing this, if you're sitting with me here and you are a high achiever, you are a corporate executive, you're an emerging leader, you're a coach yourself who needs support, that is what I'm here for. That is what I do. I would love to have a conversation with you. I will also put a link to my appointments in the comments right after this is over. I don't have appointments available until the beginning of September, which is exciting because I'm actually taking a vacation. I'm taking a vacation where I'm not going to be checking in. I'm not going to be taking meetings. That is something that I learned to do in learning how to care for myself, in learning how I wanted to run a business, and in learning how I wanted to be a grown-up. So feel free after this to DM me, tell me I'm talking about your life, tell me how this resonated with you, and stay in touch. I keep going live. Maybe I'll do a live just about my broken arms situation, which I'm writing a book about now, a little memoir that hopefully will be coming out next year. And yeah, I'd love to keep getting to know you. I love this community, and I'm so happy to have been with you. Thank you for spending so much time with me today. I appreciate you. Have a great day, everyone.